That's interesting. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our first episode of our Lesedi Talk series on being a change agent. As a teacher, we are extremely excited to create the space and to give young teachers and their allies an opportunity to share their voice and their experiences, and for the ecosystem, the education ecosystem and society at large to start really focusing on the meaningful contribution that all teachers and their allies make into the education space. And I will repeat again, to having that voice be heard louder in the ecosystem. And I would also like to welcome you to Youth Month. Our focus on Teachers Can is specifically on young teachers and elevating their role and the importance in the sector. We are also very aware of the privilege we have of being able to have that conversation and the space as young people in South Africa. I would like to introduce you to my co-pilots for the day. I have with me Kimon, who is the author of a very amazing book called Where the Light Shines Through, which tells the tale of can-do teachers in South African non-fee paying public schools. And the book captures exactly what we are trying to achieve through Teachers Can, which is to say that there are tons of amazing teachers doing really, really good work despite the circumstances, and they are really shining the light in the spaces that they occupy. Also with us today is Thandeka, and Thandeka is a teacher, and she is also a fellow on the first Teachers Can Fellowship, which is running this year, and she will be sharing on her story as well. So you will see we have a couple of people who will be joining us on the call. We are also live on Facebook. Welcome to everybody who is joining us from there as well. So let's jump right in. So firstly, thanks again, Kimon and Thandeka, for your time. We are also expecting another individual who might be able to join us, but I think she might be having some connectivity problems. But she'll join the conversation when she is able to. So to start us off, Kimon and Thandeka, and maybe we'll start with you, Kimon. Like I've said earlier, this book, Where the Light Shines Through, is such an awesome representation of the message of Teachers Can, which is that teachers are the light in our community, and that they are, like I said, doing all of these amazing things that we don't pay enough attention to, with all of the bad sort of press that often happens around the education sector, and teachers in general. Can you tell me what inspired you to write this book?
Thanks, Jay. Yes, certainly. So I run an organization called Social Innovations, and we take enrichment programs into schools, mostly primary schools. So we have worked with hundreds and hundreds of teachers over the years, taking different kinds of programs into schools. And obviously some programs work better than other programs. And I've spent many years thinking of what actually makes a program work and what are the ingredients and what actually makes things work. And in 2018, I came across a NEDU report in the Department of Education, and I'll just read a quote from it. It says, "Why are schools not doing what we expect of them? Is it because they won't or because they can't? The implication for school improvement are very different depending on how this question is answered." And that quote suggests that won't do is a question of attitude. It's something very personal that we hold within us. Whereas can't do is something which can be remedied. It can be remedied through training and support and mentorship and all sorts of other things. So that report talks about won't do schools and can do schools, but it got me thinking a lot about this concept of can do. And I started thinking, what does a can do teacher look like? Because a can do school can only be such if it is populated by can do people. What inspires and motivates her? What is her attitude to her work? What can we learn from her or him to improve the education system? At the same time that I was thinking about that, you know, the South African news cycle never takes a rest. But at that time, it was this very dramatic forced resignation of President Zuma. There was a lot in the press, and there still is a lot in the press about the collapse of local municipalities. There was a lot in the press in the time about school principals and teachers abusing their positions of power. There were sexual molestation cases in the press and all sorts of things. And it got me thinking about public officials who are in power, but who are not in service. So I set off on a journey to find public officials who were in service and who were can do, and my interest is teachers. So I went on a 2-year journey from Gansbaai, which is just about as far south as you can go in South Africa without falling into the ocean, all the way up to Chandama village on the banks of the Limpopo, which is virtually in Zimbabwe. And I interviewed 16 can-do teachers. And through those interviews and through analysis, I tried to capture in the book, what are the characteristics of a can-do teacher? And what can we learn from can-do teachers to inform the education system?
Awesome. And Kimon, if you had to think about the most impactful story that you heard through this journey and through engaging with some of the teachers that you met on your journey, what would that be?
Well, you know, they were all engaging stories, and I got to know people really quite well. But seeing that I told you I almost fell into the ocean at Gansbaai, I'll tell you a little bit about Gansbaai Academia in the Western Cape, which is in the Overberg region of the Western Cape. And that is such an interesting story. It's a very small town. It was a fishing town. It's now more a tourist town, which is kept afloat by people going to see great white sharks and seals and all of those kinds of things. And that community motivated for many, many years to open a high school there. There was never a high school there. There were 3 primary schools, and in true South African style, there was a white primary school, a colored primary school, and a black primary school, and no high school. And a lot of those kids didn't end up going to high school. So when a high school was eventually built, it was so fascinating because the kids from these 3 very segregated primary schools ended up going to this high school. So it's a multiracial, no-fee public school, which in itself is unusual. But the teacher that I interviewed there, his name is Wilton Phillips. He's the head of accounting and business studies at the school, a high school teacher. He's also now the deputy principal. I saw him the other day since I was last there. And what is so fascinating about him, each of these teachers I asked to come up with a symbol of what characterizes them as a can-do teacher. And his symbol was the bird's eye, because what he believes in is giving young people a bird's eye view of the opportunities that they face or that are available to them beyond their school, beyond the borders of their town. And this man has taken young teachers through, for example, the JSE Investment Challenge, which is a program hosted by the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And this school, in the year that I met him, competed with schools all over the country, and they won the JSE Investment Challenge. Against schools like Michael House and St. John's and all of those sorts of things through the coaching of this teacher. They've also taken part in other commerce competitions around the country. So why I think he is so significant, he's a very good teacher in the classroom, but where he sees the real opportunity is beyond the classroom. And his interest is beyond the academics. It is opening up opportunities to young people. And that culture is embedded in that school. There are many, many examples of that. So that is a very lovely story of a can-do teacher.
Thank you. And when you speak about this teacher, I can see a teacher in my life that personifies that. And I think that's the magic that exists within the teaching profession, absolutely. Thandeka. So Kimon speaks about can-do teachers, and at Teachers Can, we speak about teachers as change agents, which I think is the same side, same side of the same coin, if you want to call it that. Can you tell me a little bit about why do you think being a change agent is important for teachers?
Okay. So I think the main thing for me is that our profession in itself requires for us to be change agents. By virtue of the fact that we're teachers, we have the opportunity to be change agents. We have the opportunity to ensure social justice just through what it is that we do. And we also have the opportunity to impact young people's lives in a positive way. And Kimon highlighted some of the issues that are going on in the country. And as a teacher, you are able to then become part of the solution versus being part of the problem, and being able to show students what is out there and the possibilities, and just really be a beacon of hope. So I think that's why it's important for teachers to be change agents.
Sure, thank you. And Kita, can you tell us a little bit about how you are living out that identity of being a change agent?
Okay, I'm living out the identity of being a change agent, not only where I currently teach, but also in my community. And that's the bigger one, I think, in terms of me being a change agent, because I'm from Soweto, and I started a program called Kasifundi, and the whole idea was to try and make education more fun, get more kids to be excited about going to school. And one of our first initiatives was a book cover drive, in which we covered learners' books for free, and we gave them some stationery to get started in the year. So this started last year, and this year we had our second one. And then in addition to that, we now offer Saturday classes. And in these classes, we give extra lessons to the kids. We basically, and a lot of them, in fact, all of them are from non-fee paying schools. So they come in, they get their extra lessons, they get to engage in trying to provide quality education in the township and making it very much accessible to the children. So that's the one side of it. And I think in terms of the school where I work, it's on a smaller scale, but it's about listening to students' voices. So in the curriculum itself, in what you teach, having representation in the curriculum, and just listening to them in class, showing them that their voices are valuable, I think is another way that I'm being a change agent.
Awesome. And like I mentioned earlier, Thandeka is part of the Teachers Can Fellowship. And part of what we want to do in through Teachers Can is to create a network of teachers who identify as change agents and who want to come together around this issue of making sure that every child in South Africa receives a quality education. So, Thandeka, what do you think the role of such a network can play in advancing this cause of quality education?
I think that what's often overlooked is that teachers need to be empowered, particularly young teachers. And so this kind of organizational network, what it does is it empowers young teachers to be change agents. We learn a lot through each other's interactions. You learn what someone else is going through, and you're able to take from that, and you're able to share what you're going through as well. So things around, not only is it important to have the students' voices heard, but as a teacher, you also need to be heard, have an opportunity to reflect, and be given some form of direction from others as well, and a validation too. Something that I learned through Teachers Can was it's okay for a teacher to actually want validation, and it actually does such a great thing for them. So it's important to empower teachers. And so this is why it's so important to have this kind of network, because it's often assumed that we know everything and we'll find a way, and we will be change agents, but we can't do that without some form of empowerment, networking, being able to speak with others as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thandeka. And for us as Teachers Can, it has been really powerful to see what comes out of just creating that space for these like-minded individuals to come together. We have been joined by Zukiswa, who is actually one of the teachers who were featured in Kimon's book, Where the Light Shines Through. And Zukiswa, if you can unmute yourself and put on your camera if it's possible.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, welcome.
I just arrived from work since 7 o'clock. And then when I switch on my cell phone, you are already on. And another challenge that I have is it's load shedding period on our side. The power is coming on at 7. But yeah, good evening, guys. It's so nice to meet you. I'm not sure if I can put my camera on because I was like this since 7 o'clock. So I don't know how really I look like. But
no, that's completely fine. And Zukiswa, you are demonstrating already what we are talking about and what Kimon speaks about in this can-do teacher personality. So we love it. So maybe if we can just jump right in, Zukiswa. So you were featured in the book, and you told and gave a lovely demonstration of some of the characteristics of what a can-do teacher is. Can you perhaps tell us what does it mean to be a can-do teacher for you? And how do you demonstrate that in the classroom?
Okay, to be a can-do teacher is someone who is committed to the work that he or she is doing. Myself, I am too much committed and I'm powerful and I'm proud of everything that I do. And I make sure whatever I touch, it must be a success. I'm still energetic to do as a good teacher. Like now I'm waiting for the results because I entered the Global Awards. I'm busy and I am now on a program also called the Digify Africa, where I am up and down doing the awareness to our students about cyberbullying and how they're killing themselves, stopping them what not to and what to do when they are on social media. I'm really busy, guys. I'm really busy. And to be a can-do teacher is someone who is passionate about the job. And there is nothing wrong with our job. It just needs you and your energy. Otherwise, everything is still working very good and fine. I am highly motivated, and I also motivate others most of the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zukiswa. And all of that energy, we feel it. I'm sure everybody can agree with me. And so we've spoken a lot about the positive side of being a teacher and the contribution that a teacher makes and has the potential to make for the kids in the classroom, but also for society at large. And all of the two teachers that we have on the talk here are motivated and obviously have a lot of energy around what they do. But we can't ignore the other side, in that there are some very, very real challenges that exist within the teaching profession, which often makes it very, very difficult to maintain this type of energy and motivation in the classroom and in the sector in general. And that's part of why we wanted to start this network of Teachers Can as well. Because we know there is a point at which young teachers also feel like they can't do it anymore because of some of the challenges that they face in the profession. So if I can ask, and maybe we'll start with you, Thandeka, and then move over to Kimon and then Zukiswa. What is one challenge that you can maybe think of that makes it difficult to be this change agent, to be this can-do teacher within our current circumstances in the sector?
I think this one came up for me quite recently. It's the most heartbreaking one, is with the community work that I'm trying to do, is seeing just how much in terms of affording things, right? So looking at just having a book cover and how excited they were to get book covers and stationery, it was heartbreaking that I couldn't give more than 80 kids. And you have those who still come in, and the heartbreak that you see in terms, and the disappointment rather, when they don't get the stuff. And I remember asking one of the kids, no, it's okay, you can come back. And she was crying because she said her mother couldn't afford to help her in any way. And there's this thing where you want to help everyone. You want to be able to provide for every child that walks through your door. A most recent one for me, and again, is the Saturday classes. You want quality teachers. They do want a bit of money. They want a stipend. And if you can't afford to pay them, then that means you're not able to give those kids access to that quality education. So for me, it's been about not being able to reach everyone, and how heartbreaking it is to know that you can't do stuff for all the kids. You can only touch so many lives. And for me, that's the problem, has been being able to touch all the people that are in need.
Thank you, Thandeka. Kimon?
On my side, the biggest challenge that I think some of the teachers are unable to face as the issue of the bulk of learners that are not coping in our classes. And most of us are not trained for remedial education as to how to help those learners. And time is also running against us. The department on its own requires a lot of admin work. So time is our most common factor challenge. Those learners are not fully attended, and that is said because they are in a bulk. And I don't know why in these days it was not like so when we were still students, that half of the class is full of learners that are not coping. They are so diverse. That's the biggest challenge. Another thing, during this time of technology, we have a big problem of connectivity in our schools, and there is still a xenophobia on how to use this technology with our learners. Oh, those things are just on our way. They are like hindering forces for us to go far. But if you are motivated, you always make sure that you improvise for everything. to happen because you are the one who is willing to do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Zukiswa. Kimon?
I'm just going to, just going on from what Zukiswa was saying, I'll just share this characteristics of a can-do teacher and the traits of a can-do teacher. And when I met Zukiswa, just as the example, because this is the person we're talking about, you can see at the bottom there the traits of a can-do teacher that were common to those 16 people. And what really stands out for me about Zukiswa as a teacher, probably more than anything in those traits, is resilience. And that's a little bit of what she's talking about now. And when I met her in 2018 and I spent 2 days with her, I spent a lot of time in her classroom, but also a lot of time talking to her. And there was resilience in terms of working in the classroom in a very under-resourced school. So for example, having to make a plan, teaching kids about litmus tests and litmus paper and what is a reactant and what is an agent and all of those sorts of things, where you have so little materials that the little piece of litmus paper is so small, that when you say to them it's turning blue, they have to take your word for it because it's very small. So there's resilience in terms of being under-resourced. But what was more significant for me is resilience in the face of working in a community in Mbekweni and Paarl, which is a highly traumatized community, and where the teacher's role is much more than delivering content. So when I was there, Zukiswa was working with families where there had been children who had been abused, there were children who had been murdered, there were families where young people had committed suicide, and really the expectations on teachers, and on her specifically, seeing that this is the example, is of going to school and never knowing what you're going to be faced with. And I see there was a question in the chat about asking Zukiswa, after all the years of going into this role and of all the massive demands placed on you as a teacher, how do you keep the energy? How do you keep the drive, which then talks to this other trait of a can-do teacher, which is drive through resilience? And maybe Thandeka and Zukiswa can tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Kimon. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that teachers face, in that like it's not a 9-to-5 job, and it's not a Monday to Friday type of job, and that when you do have this attitude of being a can-do teacher and being a change agent, and you see all of the you see the issues, but you also see the possibilities, it's almost impossible to switch off. And so Zukiswa, if I can just refer you to a quote from the book. You say that a great teacher develops a child in her totality. So a great teacher develops a child in her totality. Can you tell us what does that mean to you?
That simply means, ma'am, you are not only focusing on a curriculum when you are at our level, at our sector. You must develop the child in his totality, meaning that mentally, cognitively, life skill-wise, you must be able to say at the end of the day, that child, I've molded the child so that the child can go outside. There is what you call a say in one of our 6 principles, that you enter to learn, but you must live to serve. So that is what we are always striving at. That is the meaning of developing someone in totality. You don't only just look one side, you must integrate all these spheres. You must make sure that you are maintaining the progress of every corner in the child.
Sure. And that's obviously, it's much more difficult when you are in a classroom of 20 kids versus a classroom of 40 or sometimes even 50, because we've had teachers who have to sometimes manage classes that are that big. So then my question, and maybe this is also a bit related to the question in the chat about how do you keep your energy? And maybe I'll change that question a little bit and ask, how do you maintain hope in the midst of all of that for yourself, but also for the kids in your school and in your classroom? So I will take Thandeka, if you can maybe start us off with that question. How do you maintain hope in the midst of all of this?
Once you've accepted that you can't change everything, and you actually are grateful for the little impact that you are making, that's how, for me, I maintain hope. So the 2 kids that I'm able to reach, the 4 kids, I'm grateful for that, and I want to focus on that versus focusing on the thousands that I'm unable to reach. So it's really being having a positive mindset and being more solutions driven than anything. That helps to stay positive, or to maintain the hope. For me, that's what it is.
Thank you, Thandeka. Zukiswa, how do you stay hopeful, and how do you can maintain that amazing energy that you have?
Yeah, I think the attitude is the key. You must always really maintain a positive attitude. And most of the time, I pray about everything. I pray and eat every time. And I've never...
Thanks. Sorry, I lost you. I lost you there for a second. Thank you, Zukiswa. And Kimon, maybe I'll change the question a little bit for you and ask, what do we have from your experience and everything that you've learned about the sector and about teachers in general? What is it that you think we have to be hopeful about where we stand now? Are you still on mute?
I think there's a lot to be hopeful about. We have within the system these powerful individuals. There's a lot of bad news about education. There's a lot of bad news about the education department. There's a lot of bad news about the education system. But where I think the power lies in the individual. And in South Africa, we have seen so much collapse, and we have seen so much falling apart. We have seen such devastating news coming out of structures within national government, within provincial government, within local government, within schools. We've seen corruption, we have seen mismanagement, we have seen all sorts of things. But within all of that, I believe the hope is to build this country from the most basic level. And the most basic level is through the individual. And once you have the individual, you have the classroom. And once you have the classroom, you have the school. And once you have the school, you have the cluster. And I spent 2 years talking to 16 can-do teachers. But you can multiply that 16 by thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. And I think where the hope comes through is by organizing and by giving those thousands and thousands of teachers a platform like Teachers Can and like other platforms, where individuals can come together and they can share their practice, and they can get involved in mentoring, and they can share resources, and they can share knowledge banks. And we can build as communities, and we can form those communities. We don't need the permission of government to form a community. We don't need the permission of a principal to form a community. Individuals can take the action. And I believe that's really where our biggest hope lies.
Absolutely. And I think that's also a belief that we share as Teachers Can around both the power first of the individual, and then also of the collective, and creating spaces for that positive energy, really, and can-do energy, just like you described, it can come together and drive change. So as Teachers Can, we are focused on on young teachers in particular. And every year there are thousands of young people going into university wanting to become teachers and studying to become teachers. There's often this conversation about the preparation of a young teacher from what they do in the in the classroom at university versus what they do in the classroom in, like, let's call it real life. And our hope is that through this platform, they will also start seeing these demonstrations of how they need to prepare themselves for the classroom, to not just deliver curriculum, but to actually deliver change at the end of the day. So I want to ask our panel, what can be done to create an environment for young teachers to come into spaces in the classroom and in the schooling environment that can encourage this can-do attitude, that can encourage this identity of being a change agent. Thandeka, I'll start with you.
I think that's a very good question. And just within this panel discussion that we have now, being exposed to Zukiswa, for me, has been very inspirational, and it's only been about 30 minutes. So my point from that is we need to be exposed to people who have this energy, who are able to show us that, okay, so now you see the reality, but you can actually make it and thrive in this reality and make a difference. Because often when you get into the schools, you find teachers who are tired, who are complaining a lot, and it's not necessarily their fault. But what we want to do is to encourage that positive energy and have people come together and see the possibilities versus, the negative things, because there's enough exposure to the negative. So if we can be exposed to more teachers who are experienced, I think the experience is also important, because it's like when you think of experienced teachers over the years, you do expect them to be tired, which is why the question has always been, how are you still so energetic? So it's about who comes into our spaces. Granted, it'll be a platform for young teachers, but expose us to the more experienced teachers who are saying this is a possibility, and who is able to say, things are actually worse. We didn't have the technology that you guys have now. So inspire us to do even greater things instead of be part of the complacency and be part of, just go down with the system. So I think that's one way.
I think that's so important. I think, like with every profession, just having examples and access to people who are living out that identity is so important. Kimon, what would you say? Oh, you're still on mute.
Okay. In Where Light Shines Through, the book makes some kind of recommendations at the university level, at the school level, and so on. And one of the recommendations at the university level is to include formal modules about the power of attitude in teacher education. Include case studies and invite can-do teachers to address student teachers. And recently, in Where Light Shines Through, as I said, I asked every teacher to develop a symbol. And a symbol is a very, very powerful thing. And symbols are things that can be used in education. So Zukiswa's symbol that she gave me, and I wish I had a picture of her portrait now. Her symbol is a fist. It's a fist, because she's the fist. She's the person who stands up for those who have been betrayed. And I did a series of workshops quite recently for fourth-year students and PGCE students at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, an online workshop. And I asked them to do a reflection about if you were to characterize what symbol you are working towards being, because you're studying at a university right now, what would that be? Draw your symbol and write a paragraph that describes you as a teacher. So in Where Light Shines Through, for example, one of the teachers was a wolf, a teacher, Tebogo in Sharpeville in Gauteng, because he's a high school teacher. He's a wolf leading his pack He's giving them guidance. He's giving them something to follow. Another teacher, Amira Khan in Potchefstroom, was an anchor, because she's anchoring the lives of very young children. She's teaching grade 3, 4, 5s. She's anchoring them in belief and trust, because that's what they find in their classroom. Another teacher was a star, shining a light of understanding. Another one was a stethoscope in Limpopo province, because she has a very diagnostic approach to teaching. She believes that you find the teaching barrier in each and every child as a doctor would diagnose you, and you work towards fixing that diagnosis. So I think a very, very powerful thing that universities could do for young teachers to help prepare them is to do modules about attitude and the power of attitude, and to start helping teachers imagining the can-do teacher that they would like to become. So that's something that would be lovely to see at the education faculties across the country.
Absolutely. And it's a bit like really articulating and understanding for yourself your why, if we want to go with the Simon Sinek example as well. And I think that's, so if, I just think about some of the engagement that we've had with our fellows. That's a really something that anchors. So why are you in the classroom? Why did you decide to study education? And because at the end of the day, we all have choices, right, about what we're going to do. So I think that's really, really powerful. Zukiswa, what would be your advice for how young teachers coming into the profession can adopt this attitude of being a can-do teacher or being a change agent?
My advice will be, first of all, when you are going for a teaching, don't ever think about being rich in terms of money aspect. You must only have a passion of going forward, even if it's dark or blue. And you must have a mission and a vision of why are you there. And you must also change the attitude and close your ears from people that are nailing you down, saying that you are not even earning a lot of money, those things. You must always set your mind very positive about whatever that you are doing. Vision, and at the end of the day, you must be very proud of your job. I think that those are the most keys.
Thank you, Zukiswa. And I think that resonates with the comment in the chat also about having, there's a lot of sort of personal responsibility and personal reflection around how you are going to experience this profession as well. So really getting to know yourself and your own motivation is so incredibly important in terms of navigating successfully. Minka, I'm just going to check with you if we have any questions that has come up.
Just double checking Facebook as well. We look like we've actually covered a lot of questions. I really like the points that I just got to be able to, Kaushika has made around being developmental mentors as opposed to judgmental mentors. And also this makes me think that actually mentorship is like a partnership as well, right? So it is that obviously a mentor is coming from a place of experience and a place of knowledge that they are sharing with someone else, but at the same time, there can be co-learning happening as well, and co-creation of solutions for these challenges that teachers are facing all over South Africa. So I thought that was a fantastic point. Thank you, Kaushika. But otherwise, actually, most of the questions have been answered. The top one was, how do you keep the energy going? Because it takes a lot of resilience, as Kimon has said, and it takes a lot of mental strength as well. But it is worth it in the end.
Awesome, thank you. And I just want to latch on to that point of having a sort of collaborative sort of spirit when it comes to finding solutions to some of the issues that we face as teachers, but also in the sector in general. And we've had some very, very rich like intergenerational conversations around some of these issues. So there's real value in bringing younger teachers and more experienced teachers also into the same conversation as well. So we really encourage those conversations to also happen as we navigate this far. So I'm going to then ask our panel a final question, and this is, what is your vision for South Africa in terms of our education sector? What is your vision for education in South Africa? I will start with Kimon, and then move to Zukiswa.
Yeah, that's quite a question to be asking. I think, I will reiterate what I said a little bit earlier, that obviously we have to work on systems, and we have to work on curriculum reform, and we have to work on pedagogy, and we have to work on teacher training, and we have to work on all these massive systems. But these massive systems are very, very scary. And they're not always within our power to change. But what we can change is change our attitude, or we can mold our attitude. We can aspire. Zukiswa was talking about, what is your mission? What is your vision? We can use symbols to work towards something that we're really trying to achieve. So my vision, I would say, is that people within the sector first ground themselves in their vision and in their mission of what they're trying to achieve, and that we come together as collectives, formally and informally, and work together towards improving or building what is in our power to change. I really think that is the best answer for us, over and above all the massive structural things that need to happen.
Thank you, Kimon. Zukiswa, can you tell us what is your vision for education in South Africa?
Like I've already said, that we really need to have mission and a vision, and also change the attitude about our education. And again, the curriculum to be really relevant, so as to have better qualitative education in South Africa, because there are lots of complaints in for an example, the curriculum that we are busy with. Some people have got that attitude that this curriculum is not ours, they're complaining, they're doing that, all this thing. But what is very much important, we must also strive for the better, to have our learners or our clients to be able to benefit from the education that they get from our schools.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zukiswa. Thandeka, what is your vision for education in South Africa?
My vision for education in South Africa is that of the provision of, is for all the students to have access to quality education. I know it's a big one given all the issues that are there, but I think as a minimum, if the students could have access to quality education, that would be really a huge thing.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Thandeka. And then, so just to sort of wrap us up as a closing thought, the series as we stand now is really focused on identity. So one of the things that we hope that Teachers can do is to show our network and people who are interested in the education space and society at large, that the teaching profession is an important profession, and we want to elevate the profession to the standard that it was before, because there was a time when it was a big deal to be a teacher, and it was a very respected profession, and I think in a lot of areas it still is that. And we want to keep shining the light on that. And a large part of bringing that into reality is how we see ourselves as teachers at the end of the day. So do I value my contribution? Do I see myself as someone who can make a difference? And do I see myself as a can-do teacher, as a change agent? And so it's very, very difficult to convince someone else of something that you don't believe yourself. So we think that is something that is really, really foundational around building and developing teachers as change agents. And we also believe that that's an inherent part of the profession. You can't walk into the classroom and not make a difference. That's kind of what you do as a teacher, or whether that's something that you consciously or whether you do it subconsciously. And I think it's important to bring it to the consciousness as well, to get a real understanding of what it is, what power we hold when we walk into the schooling environment and to a classroom and we engage with our learners and the people in our space as teachers. I'm going to say thank you very much for our panel, Zukiswa, Kimon, and Thandeka, for joining us, sharing your story and sharing your insights, and for providing the content for a really enriching conversation. We really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much for the people who joined us on the call and on Facebook Live, for your comments and for your questions and engagement. The Lesedi Talks happens every second week. So you can join us for the next one in 2 weeks' time, where we will discuss another element of being a teacher and being a change agent, and how we can really build and embed that identity in our profession. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Can you let me say hi to Kimos, my manager, my friend?
Hi, Zukiswa. Lovely to see you. It's been a while, and lovely that you made it onto the call. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to see you live.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening and a good week further. Be safe out there.
Thank you so much. It was so fruitful. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you, Zukiswa. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Mm.